Hello and welcome to this live conversation. We are coming to you from the Body Shop's HQ in London. It feels very special to be here in person for this conversation. I'm Venetia, I'm a podcaster and a fair fashion campaigner, and I'm joined by Chris, who is the Global Head of Activism, Sustainability and Corporate Comms here at the Body Shop, which is quite an impressive title, Chris.
Quite a long title.
I
think we could work on it. Yeah.
Today we're going to be answering the questions that you sent in via my Instagram page, and we're going to be talking all things sustainability here at the Body Shop. So let's dive straight in, as we've got quite a lot to get into. Chris, it's a big one to kick us off. One of the questions that came in was, can you really run a company sustainably when you sell millions of products worldwide? How can selling products ever be sustainable?
Yeah. It's a good question. It's an insightful question. I think it is a challenge running a business and running a sustainable business in an unsustainable system. I think we've been seeing all the noise around COP26. There's a lot of discussion around fossil fuel, around energy. How can you run a business, to your question, in a way that is sustainable? I think there's a couple of things I would say from the Body Shop's perspective. I think firstly, it is absolutely a journey. It is a journey for a company like ours to get to the point where we are having zero impact. And I think we need to accept that. It will take a little bit of time. But the second thing I think is also crucial is you've got to know where you want to end up. If you are seeking to be a truly sustainable business, you have to set clear targets. Clear targets, of course, in the future, but those targets need to be measurable. But most importantly, they need to be at a point, I think, where they are zero harm. So there's a few things. We have a sustainability plan called the Commitment to Life. Under that plan, there are many targets which I think do start delivering true sustainability. So, for example, in the spirit of COP, we have a target by 2030 to reach net zero across all of our supply chain and all of our business scope. Boring technical language, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So that's a good example of where we are trying to be a sustainable business in an unsustainable world. But it's a great question. It's tricky. It is tricky.
Do you think by 2030 is enough for the Body Shop?
I think it's a great question. It's 10 years before the UN mandate it as a goal. So I think we're already bringing it forward by 10 years. I think it's a target that's been set using a system called science-based targets. So it's really at the pinnacle of best practice. Would we love to do it today? Yes. But we are making progress. So 60% of our stores around the world are now run on renewable energy. Last week we started delivering inner city products in Germany using bicycles. In London, and here in London we use electric vehicles. So it's step by step. Mm-hmm. But the important thing I think for us is we know where we want to end up. Mm-hmm. But it's tricky. It's challenging.
I think that end goal is so important in whatever you're doing in terms of sustainability. Like, have that goal, have that vision, and then work backwards.
I think so.
What's happening with the Body Shop's work with Future Fit?
Yeah, Future Fit. So Future Fit are a think tank who we've worked with for about 10 years. And I think the biggest thing that we learned of Future Fit is exactly that. Know where you want to end up. This idea of backcasting. So setting a goal and working backwards on how you're going to achieve that. So a good example of the inspiration that we've taken from Future Fit is our packaging strategy. So for example, we have a goal which we will reach by 2030 of 100% of our packaging being recyclable, reusable or compostable. So that's our goal, and we've worked backwards on how we're going to achieve that. And actually, because we set a goal and worked backwards, we realised we could do it a bit earlier than 10 years. So yeah, Future Fit, close to our heart, inspired a lot of the work that we have done, both within the Body Shop, but also in Natura & Co, our bigger group, the bigger company. Yeah.
Awesome. It's been really great actually to see the progression of specifically packaging actually since I started working with the Body Shop from a few years ago up until now. The packaging for especially the Christmas range always strikes me at the difference in what it used to be like.
Yeah. No, I'm glad. It's lovely that you said that, because it does feel, the company's changing. We're really getting back. I think you mentioned this, or met earlier, we're really getting back to our roots and what Anita sort of built the company to be.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time to be part of it.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love that the Body Shop is cruelty-free, but I wish their ingredients were more natural, is a question that a couple of people from my community asked.
Great. Yeah, it's a good question. I think, I suppose the first thing to say is, you know, we use a lot of natural ingredients. Community fair trade is one of the things that Anita Roddick, our founder, pioneered. It's still the largest in our industry, and it very much focuses on using natural ingredients. The reason that we don't use 100% natural ingredients is purely because if you did, you would have to keep all of your your products in the fridge, and they wouldn't last. So you need synthetics, but you need safe synthetics. So there's a couple of things that are probably worth sharing. So we have very, very stringent safety rules which dictate what we use in our products. So we have we banned about, I think today it's about 1,700 things that we don't use because we don't like their impact on the environment, and some of our customers have talked about some concerns about them, so we take those out. Everything that we use is, as you said, accredited by Cruelty Free International to be not tested on animals. And I think the other thing that's quite interesting, and again it goes a little bit back to our history, Anita pioneered this idea of cruelty-free musk, synthetic musk, which replicated the musk that at the time came from animals. So actually that's a good example, and there are many more within our product range, where we don't use natural, but we use a synthetic, which is actually better for whether it's animals or better for the environment. But it's a really good question, but one that I think is, for us, we get asked it now and then, and I think that a focus moving forward is really moving towards pure biodegradable products. So that's kind of the next phase for us as we work forward.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes me, I think a lot about the waste that's generated from, I think about when you were talking about that, I was thinking about food waste and how sometimes it's really important to have, things that make products last longer so that we waste less. But the biodegradability sounds very exciting. Next question. What specific products are made using the upcycled plastic, and what products come in packaging that is recycled plastic? And then also, what products contain CFT plastic, and what is CFT plastic? So this is a lot about plastic and packaging.
Yeah, right. So I wonder what the best way to answer that in that order. I think maybe it's the thing that's most exciting. I think the community fair trade plastic program that the Body Shop brought in a couple of years ago is just brilliant. It's just brilliant. I think you know a little bit about this as well, don't you? So it came from, I remember the idea came about 3 or 4 years ago when we were talking about, with the guy who runs community fair trade, how do we work with people in cities that are kind of at the bottom of the pyramid, the bottom of the people who are finding life the most challenging. And because with community fair trade, we work a lot in the rural areas, more so than the cities. And it came from that conversation, how can we start working with waste pickers, and what do waste pickers have that we could use? And of course, it is plastic that is disposed of in community fair trade sense in India. So we work with the waste pickers. The waste pickers collect the highest quality plastic, and we reprocess it. They get a fair wage, they get a better livelihood, and we include it in our products. So already, I think in the shampoo, ginger shampoo bottles, it's included in our new body butters as well, the most sustainable body butters we've ever made. So it's a brilliant story. It's a story about the environment, but it's also a story about people, I think, and the idea of how can you bring people along on this sort of just transition from the old economy to the new. How can we involve them in this? And I think community fair trade, plastic is a really good example of how we're doing that.
Yeah, I think with any sustainable business, you have to match environment with human. It can't just be one or the other, it has to be both. So the community trade aspect of the Body Shop is easily one of my favourite aspects of it. I just think it's so important.
It's easy to forget, I think. We find that, especially with our concerns about the climate crisis. How do we... There's a phrase that we've started to use to remind us, this idea of just transition. And I think, how do you bring often the poorest people who are going to be most affected by climate, how do you bring them along with us? How do we as a business help maybe isn't the word, but work with those individuals, with those communities to really drive change? And I think Community Fair Trade Plastic is one of a few examples that are coming into the business.
Totally. I almost feel like it almost should be like a non-negotiable for a big business in the global north to be helping or assisting or working with folks in the global south, because that plastic problem that the people I was lucky enough to meet in India were dealing with is that's our plastic. We created that. We caused those issues. Yeah. So it feels, I wish like more businesses could be acting in that way. Yeah. I know a lot are, but a lot aren't.
Yeah, I think we're lucky, I think because of the history of the company and the DNA and the skills of a lot of people in the business, we're kind of really honoured and lucky to have the people in the company who know how to do that and know how to work respectively. I mean, you've seen this in India. They're not suppliers. They're partners, and there's a different tone, isn't it? There's a different feeling of how that works. We're really proud of it. Yeah. We want to do more, and we're going to keep doing more. Community Fair Trade Plastic is, it's the latest and at the moment the greatest, but some other stuff is coming as well to look out for.
Love to hear it. Next question is, how can the Body Shop recycle beauty packaging if the packaging isn't recyclable?
That's a good question. I think, and it's a fair question. At the moment, I think if we look at our packaging range, we know about 70% is recyclable, easily curbside recyclable. That is going to, within the next 2 years, that is going to increase dramatically. But to your point, what do you do with the material that isn't curbside recyclable? We have a scheme in store, which again, Anita, I'm talking a lot about Anita.
Keeps coming up.
Well, I suppose.
No, it's great. I love that she does.
It's funny, isn't it?
Amazing. Yeah.
I suppose we still have that kind of entrepreneurial roots in the business. So she introduced this idea of bring your packaging back, and we brought that back. We brought it back a little while ago. We had to pause it during the pandemic, but now it's back in stores. It's back in stores in the UK, and anything that's hard to recycle, you can bring it back, and we will guarantee it is cared for and the loop is closed. So things like pumps are probably the most challenging thing, because they're not so separable. So the suppliers will separate them and recycle them. So there is a solution, but our goal, I think, is to stop that program. Yeah. To make sure that everything can be recycled in your and my home and all of our customers' homes.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to visit My Waste, who are your new recycling partners in Hull, and I saw how every single part of every empty was recycled. Fascinating. It was super cool. Yeah. Really, really amazing. And actually, you have the recycled plastic in as you come into the HQ of the Body Shop, which I think is very cool, and I think it's also in like a lot of the stores as well.
That's right.
It's an amazing material.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, as you can see, we are sat in front of one of the refill stations. One of the questions that came in was, why did the Body Shop not do refills of everything?
Well, this is a start. This is a start. So this is a kind of back to the future moment. So can I mention Anita one more time, and then I will. So this is something that she pioneered, very practically. The idea that we shouldn't waste. So we brought this back. It's now in 20 countries. There's about, I think, 300-400 of these around the world. I think that we want it to extend to all of our range, but I think the challenge that not the challenge that we're finding, the challenge that we set ourselves was, how do we bring our customers into the circular economy in a way that they enjoy, in a way that adds value to their life, in a way that's convenient. And I think what we've done with this refill station is learn and learn and learn. How do we really provide something that people really want? Mm-hmm. We've got 100% recycled aluminium bottles. These are 100% recyclable. The sustainability story is solid, and it actually, you know, us talking about backcasting, it gets us where we need to go. But unless customers engage in it, unless we provide a brilliant service and a brilliant product, you know, the truth is it's not going to work. So we've learned, and our goal is to have one of these in every country in the Body Shop community within the next 12, 18 months.
Amazing.
That's the goal.
Awesome. That's really exciting. So if you haven't got one in your local store yet, hopefully it won't be too long.
It's coming, yeah.
How do you balance pressure for economic profit with an ethical conduct / giving back? Huge question.
It's a good question. Are these all from your community?
Yeah, they're a discerning lot.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and again, like, so right after what we've seen in the last couple of weeks around COP, I think there's two ways I'd answer that question. One is we are a certified B Corporation. So as soon as we joined Natura & Co, the first thing that my boss said was, right, let's certify as a B Corp. So it's the highest standard of social and environmental practice. It's independently audited. So it's a high standard to reach. When you certify as a B Corp, you change your legal registration. So your actual legal documentation changes to be a business that doesn't just make money. It cares for stakeholders on the environment, cares for stakeholders in society, and it cares for shareholders. So actually, it's enshrined in our legal documents that we have to balance the interests of other stakeholders beyond our shareholders. So we have to do it, and if we don't do it, then we have to explain, you know, to Companies House within the UK, which is where we are, why. So I think that's one thing. How do you do it? I think every day you're faced with a challenge, right? Of whether it's an economic interest or a social and environmental interest, and I think you live perpetually on a seesaw, trying to balance it out, and it's really, really tricky. There are things that we do because of our sustainability aims that cost us more, and that's just the way it is. You know, we pay. What's a good example? We pay a living wage for our employees, which is something we don't have to do, but we do because it's the right thing to do, and it's balancing those interests. So it's a lot more expensive. But it is the right thing to do. So it's a good. That's probably the most. It's a kind of precious example to us.
It's a wild thing that it's something you don't have to do.
Funny, isn't it? Yeah. A living wage where it's fair for our teams. But that's something that we have again brought in fairly recently, and we'll pay all of our employees by 2023. That, you know, it's a level that they deserve and rightly should have. But there you go. There's another good example of where you've got to bring that economic challenge into the business, phase it in, do it responsibly. So you are still, you know, you're caring for your shareholders whilst caring for your employees. It's a tricky thing. Quite
a test, I think, is to, when it's like a, you know, quite a big corporation like the Body Shop, is to see if there's, I find it really interesting going into my local shop and seeing how your employees in the stores, how they're finding working for the company. And they always seem to be really happy, and there seems to be like a good, like, overall sense of like everyone really likes working for this brand, and I think that's a really good way to tell. Whereas I am, you know, quite involved in the sustainable fashion movement, and so often I'll have people message me from particularly fast fashion brands saying I had the most horrendous time working for this company. Right. And I think that's a good telltale sign.
So. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we don't get everything right, of course we don't, but I think our people believe we're giving it a damn good go, and our store staff are brilliant. They are lovely.
Yeah, they're lovely. They're really lovely.
I was in Glasgow. I was a couple of weeks ago. Brilliant. Loved them.
Yeah.
Off they were marching with all of the climate activists. That's the Body Shop. That's the people that they are. Yeah, we're really lucky.
Completely agree. Someone would love to hear more about open hiring. So can you explain what this is and tell us more about it?
Yeah, so open hiring is another. It's funny when one talks about this, because you kind of take for granted all of the things that we're doing, but this is brilliant. This is a real groundbreaking idea. So, you know, many people face barriers to employment for getting a job because maybe something that they've done in the past. You know, it's like a driving license. If you haven't got a clean driving license, then you know it's hard to find an insurer. If you haven't got a clean CV, or even if you haven't got a CV, then people won't give you a job. Open hiring was designed to remove those barriers and not judge people. So what we've done, we started in the US, and it's now rolled out to the UK and Australia, is simply ask 3 questions of people. We don't judge them on their background. So 3 questions that we ask for jobs within in the distribution centres and now retail is: can you stand for 8 hours a day? Can you lift this box? And the third thing is, are you legally entitled to work? So if a person can pass those, then we'll give them a job. And it's that simple. And the stories that are coming, the learning that we have about having a much more diverse workforce of people with different backgrounds is just so rich, because it makes us better. The learning, I think, from our people is, you know, everyone's welcome in the company, whatever the history. Let's not judge people. A lot of people who've come in maybe have had challenges with, you know, the law or other issues. So let's not judge. Let's be inclusive. And there's been no problems with it at all. I think when we started saying it, people were like, "Are you sure? This is a good idea." It's been brilliant, and it's been so good that we're going, UK, Australia, and maybe more countries as we get better and we learn. Yeah,
cool.
Really cool.
Next question: How did you get into sustainability? Which is always a question that throws me personally. Like, how did you get into it? But how did you get into sustainability? As I know lots of folks are wanting to kind of learn more about it, study it, go to university to read it in whatever capacity they can. So, how did you get into it?
I used to make adverts, and I wasn't very good at that. And then I went to work with an NGO, and I was okay at that. But then I met Anita Roddick, and I went to work for her. So it wasn't a planned story. It was just I suppose it just emerged. I've always, as a small child, I've always loved business. My dad used to work in business, and I always loved that. And I always had a belief in fairness and change. And I think the career I've had, if you can call it that, has just been bringing those together. I'm not sure whether there will be sustainability departments in businesses in the future. I think that's if people were asking, what about a career, should I study it? I think what we're seeing in the Body Shop is, yes, we have a sustainability team who guide, who manage the certifications, who offer an internal consultancy, but more and more we're seeing sustainability ingrained into everything that everybody does. So the refuel station, this was delivered by the brand team, led by the brand team. Yes, we offered advice and guidance, but these guys drove it because sustainability is integral to their job too. So I think sustainability departments may not exist, but I think as it's happening within the Body Shop, everyone has a line on their job description. Sustainability is part of what you do.
Here's a question for you. If someone's watching and they really want to work in sustainability in a business, would you recommend them going into a less sustainable business and trying to change things from the inside, or a more sustainable business where they can kind of merge in quite easily? And
yeah, that's a good question.
I just threw that one at you. This one wasn't on the list.
It's absolutely the case that not every business is working towards the targets that that the world needs them to work to. So I would think if somebody is absolutely passionate about making change, go and challenge the people who aren't doing enough. Mm-hmm. Go and push that forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be where my sense. I've thought about it sometimes. Maybe you should go, but it's Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the main thing, I think, what I've learned, and I sense you too, is you got to do what you love, right? You've got to do what you love. And bringing sustainability into what you love is probably the answer for most people's careers. I would wonder.
I'd always say think about what your kind of main skill set is, because we all have really different skills, abilities, and all of this kind of thing. So really think about what you're truly, truly good at, and then how you can use that to fight for a better world.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And there are a few tools around online and things, aren't there, which can really, I think people see them sometimes as fads, but these strength finders, and they are brilliant. They're brilliant because you're right. You can work out where your power is, where your strength is. I'm terrible at detail, but I'm good at, I can see the big picture. And I only learned that fairly recently about what I was good at. I wish I'd learned it a bit sooner.
Right, yeah, it's so important. Yeah. And also I would say working collaboratively, which I think is clearly something that you do and the Body Shop do really well. Working with as many people as you can, so you're all using those amazing skills. Do you have any extra tips for anyone wanting to get into your line of work? You must get contacted on LinkedIn all the time. I'm just imagining those messages.
Yeah, I think, I don't feel I'm qualified to give anyone career advice at all. I think the main thing I think I was lucky, again, because I never took a job I didn't want to do. Not because of wealth, but because I slept on my auntie's floor when I first moved to London to just get into NGO world. Was my friends were kind of working in insurance and getting cash and stuff. I was really lucky to just be able to find somewhere to sort of lay and get voluntary experience and end up doing what I really wanted to do. And that sacrifice at the start, I think, set me up to be able to make the choices I've been able to make. I think that's my Auntie Angela. She's very nice. Yeah, she I owe her a little bit.
Auntie Angela.
Auntie Angela.
I love that.
Yeah.
Final question for you. It's a big one. Do you think our world will ever take sustainability seriously?
Yes. I think it has to. I think that being in Glasgow and at the COP meeting, and was it last 2 weeks or so, I think there were two things that I learned from that experience. One is that it is starting, the idea of a sustainable world is being taken seriously. Not quick enough, okay, but it is starting to be taken seriously by policymakers, and that's pretty cool. We're starting to talk about getting rid of coal. We're starting to include fossil fuels in international agreements. So I think it's coming. It's inevitable. It's coming, but it's too slow. The other point I'd make is the young people. When I saw the young people in St. George's Square, in Glasgow, the activists talking, the energy, the positivity that I saw there was astonishing, and that gave me more hope than the suits. I don't like buttons, so I don't wear suits, but the suits inside compared to the youth outside, that's where you give hope. So yeah, the sustainable world will come probably when these guys move out of the way and these guys come in, and that's my hope. People like my kids, people like you, people like my team. They're the ones who are going to take this over, and I think their perspective and their vision of the world is different from the incumbents. So I am positive. We've got to be positive about it, but we've got to challenge ourselves. We've got to speak out. We've got to be courageous. We've got to say stuff to our bosses, to our colleagues that they may not want to hear. But yeah, that's the way change happens. That's what I've learned. Speak up.
Great. Well, a lovely way to end this conversation. Thank you so much for everyone who has tuned in. And if you have any questions, do leave them in the comments down below and someone will get back to you. This has been really fun. Thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure.
And we hope to see you soon. Bye.